Listen closely, Aries. Not because something is about to scare you, but because something inside you already knows. You didn't stop here by accident. And no, this isn't about fate chasing you down. It's about a quiet moment when your life paused, just long enough for the truth to surface. Lately, you've felt it. That subtle pull, that inner shift you couldn't explain, like a fire rearranging itself beneath your calm. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're not losing your edge. You're waking up. And if this message found you now, it's not asking you to believe anything. It's inviting you to trust what you already feel. Stay with me, because what's unfolding next isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you are. You know what's interesting, Aries? Nothing here is asking you to stop because something bad is about to happen. This moment isn't loud. It doesn't knock. It doesn't demand your attention. It simply appears. And somehow, you stayed. That's the interruption. Not the kind that crashes into your life, but the kind that quietly pulls a chair next to you and waits until you're ready to look up. Because this didn't interrupt your life. It revealed it. There's a reason you're here right now, listening instead of scrolling, and it has nothing to do with chance. Not fate in the dramatic sense. Not destiny chasing you down. It's more subtle than that. It's the accumulation of moments. Small decisions you didn't think mattered. Times you chose to stay silent instead of reacting. Losses that taught you what strength actually costs. Endings you didn't fully grieve because you had to keep moving. All of that brought you here. Awakening doesn't arrive with fireworks. For Aries, it usually shows up as discomfort first. A quiet friction between who you've been and who you can no longer pretend to be. Lately, life hasn't felt wrong. Just slightly out of alignment. Like wearing a jacket that still fits, but no longer keeps you warm. And that's not failure. That's growth asking for honesty. You weren't pulled into this moment because you're weak. You were drawn here because something inside you is strong enough to pause without collapsing. That's rare. Most people run from these moments. They fill the silence. They distract themselves. They keep busy so they don't have to feel the shift happening underneath. But you didn't. And here's the thing, most people won't tell you. Awakening doesn't begin when you hear a message like this. It begins much earlier. When you start questioning what once felt automatic. When you stop chasing things that used to excite you. When your fire stops burning outward and turns inward instead. That's when something clicks. Not a realization you can explain. More like a knowing that settles in your chest. A quiet yes. A sense that something is rearranging itself without asking for permission. Have you noticed that lately, Aries, you've been less interested in proving yourself and more interested in protecting your energy? That's not you giving up. That's you waking up. And as this moment opens a little wider, as the noise fades just enough for you to hear yourself again, there's another layer waiting underneath this one. A deeper understanding of why restlessness has been following you not as an enemy, but as a guide. And that's where we're going next. All right, stay with me, Aries. Let's keep this gentle. No rush, no fixing, just honesty. There's a reason the restlessness showed up the way it did. Not as panic, not as chaos, but as a quiet irritation you couldn't shake. It felt like something was off. Not wrong enough to walk away from everything. Just wrong enough to make you sigh more often than you used to. You'd sit in familiar rooms and feel like a guest. Hear conversations you once enjoyed and feel your attention drift. Smile when expected, then feel tired for no clear reason. That wasn't you becoming ungrateful. And it wasn't you losing passion. It was old energy no longer fitting the person you're becoming. Aries, you're built for movement, for beginnings, for momentum that comes from truth, not pressure. And when your inner world starts shifting, you feel it first as impatience, not anger. Impatience, a subtle resistance to pretending, a low tolerance for surface-level connections, a deep fatigue around anything that requires you to play a role instead of be real. That's not a breakdown. That's discernment waking up. You didn't suddenly become difficult. You became honest. And honesty, especially later in life, changes everything. Some relationships didn't turn sour. They simply stopped growing. Some work didn't fail. It just stopped feeding you. Some roles weren't mistakes. They just completed their season. That's hard to accept when you've been taught to push through, to stay loyal, to finish what you start, no matter the cost. But here's something not enough people say out loud. Completion is not quitting. It's wisdom. Your restlessness wasn't telling you to burn everything down. It was asking you to stop carrying what no longer belongs to you. Have you noticed how lately you don't crave noise the way you used to? How silence feels less empty and more informative? How you're less interested in being impressive and more interested in being aligned? That's not you shrinking. That's you refining. And it's okay if you blamed yourself at first. If you wondered what was wrong with you. If you tried to talk yourself out of what you were feeling. Most people do. But nothing is wrong with you. You didn't lose your spark. You're protecting it. This phase isn't about finding something new to chase. It's about recognizing what you're done running from. And as you let that settle, as you stop judging the restlessness and start listening to it, you may begin to see something else hiding underneath. Because that unease didn't come alone. It arrived carrying information about pressure you've been under, weight you've been holding, expectations that slowly shaped your days without asking your consent. So let me ask you something, softly. When did everything start feeling heavier than it needed to be? Hold that question for a moment, because what you're about to understand next has nothing to do with weakness and everything to do with how strength learns to change form. All right, let's stay right here, Aries. Don't rush past this part. This is where a lot of misunderstandings finally soften. You know, it's easy to look back at the last stretch of your life and label it as punishment. Like you did something wrong. Like the universe tightened its grip on you for no clear reason. But that story never quite sat right with you, did it? Because deep down, you could feel it. The pressure didn't feel cruel. It felt intentional. Heavy, yes. Uncomfortable, absolutely. But not hostile. Think about it for a moment. The financial strain that forced you to get honest about what really matters. The responsibilities that landed on your shoulders, not to crush you, but to show you what you're actually capable of carrying. The loneliness that crept in, not to abandon you, but to strip away the noise so you could finally hear yourself think. None of that was meant to break you. It was meant to focus you. There was no enemy chasing you. No invisible force testing your worth. No cosmic battle with you caught in the middle. Just life narrowing your path until distraction was no longer an option. Aries, you weren't pushed into a dead end. You were guided into a quieter room. One without applause, without chaos, without the constant pull to perform. And in that quiet, something important happened. You started asking different questions. Not, how do I win this? But why am I still carrying this? Not, what do they expect from me? But what do I actually need? That's not weakness. That's maturity taking the wheel. The pressure was never there to punish you. It was there to remove what didn't belong. To peel back the layers of obligation, expectation, and old definitions of success that you outgrew a long time ago. You didn't fail under the weight. You adjusted your posture, and once you see it that way, the fear starts to loosen its grip. You realize you weren't late. You weren't off track. You weren't being tested to see if you'd survive. You were being refined. Have you noticed how certain things no longer scare you the way they used to? How situations that once felt overwhelming now feel manageable. Not easy, just clearer. That clarity didn't come from comfort. It came from pressure applied in the right places. And here's the part people rarely talk about. Pressure, when it's purposeful, doesn't destroy fire. It teaches it how to burn steadily. You're not standing in the aftermath of something that went wrong. You're standing in the middle of something that finally makes sense. So take another breath here. Let your shoulders drop. Let go of the idea that you are being punished for growing. Because what's becoming visible now is a different relationship with your own strength. A calmer one. A wiser one. And as that understanding settles in, you may start to feel something else rising quietly beneath it. Not urgency, not force, but a deeper confidence. The kind that comes from realizing your fire never needed to fight the pressure. It needed to learn what it was shaping you into next. Stay with me, Aries, right here, because this is the part where a quiet truth finally comes into view. Your fire never went out. It didn't disappear. It didn't fail you. It didn't abandon you when things got heavy. It just changed its shape. There were moments you felt tired. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes. The kind that settles into your bones. Moments when doubt crept in and asked questions you never used to ask. Who am I doing this for? Why does this feel harder than it should? But even then, you never truly quit. You paused. You slowed down. You pulled your energy inward. And for someone like you, that can feel terrifying. Because Aries is known for motion, for spark, for boldness that lights up a room. So when your fire stopped roaring, you may have wondered if something was wrong. Nothing was wrong. The flame didn't die. It went low. It went quiet. Like embers tucked beneath ash, waiting for the right moment to breathe again. That is not weakness. That is instinct. You didn't lose yourself. You protected yourself. Awakening doesn't arrive to replace who you are. It arrives to strip away everything that was never truly yours. The pressure to perform. The need to prove. The habit of burning too fast for too long. And underneath all that, there you are. Still direct. Still instinctive. Still deeply loyal to what feels real. Only now there is patience where there used to be urgency. There is intention where there used to be impulse. There is power that no longer needs to announce itself. That is the fire you're reconnecting with. Not the kind that scorches everything in its path, but the kind that warms. The kind that sustains. The kind that knows when to move and when to hold. Have you noticed how lately you feel stronger without being louder? More confident without needing approval? More certain without forcing outcomes? That's not you becoming less Aries. That's you becoming more yourself. This phase is not about turning into someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to rush. Before you learned to mistake exhaustion for ambition. Your fire was never gone. It was waiting for you to stop fighting it and start listening to it. And as it begins to glow again, slowly, steadily, you may sense something else happening alongside it. A subtle shift in how you respond to life. A new way of saying no. A new way of choosing what stays. So, let me ask you something, gently. What if this quieter fire is actually the strongest one you have ever known? Because just beyond this moment, there is movement beginning again. Not rushed, not forced, aligned. And that is where the story continues. Stay right here with me, Aries. This is where things become quietly undeniable. Because the shift you've been sensing is not something that's about to happen. It's something that has already begun to move. Not dramatically, not in ways others would immediately notice, but in choices so subtle, they almost slip past you. You've started saying no, not loudly, not defensively, just calmly, without explaining yourself into exhaustion, and that alone tells a story. You don't feel the same pull to be seen anymore. You still care. You still show up, but you no longer chase approval like it decides your worth. There's a difference now between being respected and being validated. And you can feel it in your body when something isn't aligned. That's not indifference. That's clarity. You're choosing a quieter kind of honesty. Living a little leaner, a little truer. Not because you gave up on ambition, but because you refined it. This is how real change often looks. It doesn't announce itself. It rearranges priorities. The shift didn't come with fireworks or promises. It came with discernment, with fewer words, with longer pauses before you react. You've probably noticed that decisions land differently now. You don't second-guess yourself the way you used to. You feel your way forward instead of forcing momentum. That's not hesitation. That's grounding. And here's something important. You didn't need anyone to confirm this for you. No applause. No external signal telling you that you're on the right path. You felt it internally, like standing on solid ground after walking on uneven terrain for too long. That's how you know this isn't a passing mood. It's a recalibration. Awakening isn't a moment where everything suddenly becomes perfect. It's a moment where you stop betraying what you already know. You trust yourself more now, even when the outcome isn't clear, especially when it isn't clear. And that trust changes how you move through the world. You listen more closely to your energy. You leave sooner when something feels off. You stay present instead of proving your strength through endurance. Have you noticed that lately, peace has started to matter more than being right? That's not you softening. That's you stabilizing. This is the part of the journey that doesn't get celebrated enough. The quiet middle. Where nothing explodes, but everything settles into place. You are not waiting for your life to begin. You're already inside it. Making choices that align without forcing certainty. And as this sense of grounded awareness deepens, another layer begins to reveal itself. Because when you stop chasing what doesn't fit, space opens. For better decisions, for clearer opportunities, for doors that don't require you to push them open. So let me ask you something, softly. What if this calm you're feeling isn't the end of your fire, but the moment it learns where to go next? Because just ahead, something begins to respond to this shift. Not loudly, not urgently, but precisely. And that's where the story continues to unfold. Stay with me a little longer, Aries. This is where the future doesn't rush in. It responds. When a shift happens this quietly, what opens next is never loud. It doesn't arrive with promises or countdowns. It doesn't announce itself as a miracle. It shows up as alignment. You may not notice it at first, because it doesn't feel like luck. It feels like relief. Things begin to make sense in a practical way. Not exciting in a flashy sense, but steady, grounded, usable. Opportunities don't suddenly explode into your life. They appear in forms that fit who you are now. Conversations that feel easier than expected. Options that don't require you to overextend. Doors that open without you having to force them. And maybe for the first time in a long while, you don't feel the urge to sprint through them. You walk. That's an important difference. As your frequency changes, the wrong things don't need to be confronted or fought. They simply lose their grip. People who no longer resonate drift out naturally. Situations that thrived on your urgency lose momentum. Nothing dramatic. Nothing cruel. Just space clearing itself. And in that space, something healthier begins to settle in. Money decisions start to feel calmer, less reactive, more intentional. You stop chasing numbers and start respecting stability. Relationships shift too. You gravitate toward people who don't drain you, who listen without fixing, who don't need you to perform strength just to be accepted. There's more honesty now, and surprisingly, more peace. Your choices become firmer, not stubborn, just clear. You don't explain yourself as much. You don't doubt your instincts as often. You feel when something aligns and when it doesn't. And here's the part that matters. This isn't about settling. It's about refinement. You're not lowering your standards. You're raising your self-respect. This phase of opening is subtle, but it's deeply transformative because it's built to last. No overnight success stories. No sudden transformations you have to keep up with. Just a life slowly rearranging itself to support who you actually are. Have you noticed how hope feels different now? Less desperate, more grounded. Like something you can lean on instead of something you chase. That's not coincidence. That's maturity meeting opportunity. You're learning that growth doesn't always ask for courage. Sometimes it asks for patience. Sometimes it asks for trust. And as these doors open one by one, quietly, deliberately, you begin to understand something deeper. What's coming into your life now isn't testing you. It's responding to you. So take this moment in. Let yourself notice what no longer needs fixing. What no longer needs proving. Because as the outside world begins to reflect your inner shift, another realization is forming just beneath the surface. One about the role you naturally step into when you stop trying to lead and simply live from truth. And that's where the story gently moves next. Stay close to this moment, Aries, because what's becoming clear now isn't about what you do next. It's about how you move from here on. You were never meant to save anyone. And deep down, you already know that. That old pressure to carry everyone, to be the strong one, to fix what others wouldn't face. It's been slowly lifting, not because you stopped caring, but because you learned something important. People don't change when they're pushed. They change when they feel permission. And that's where your role quietly shifts. You don't lead by convincing anymore. You lead by choosing yourself, by walking first, by living in a way that makes honesty look possible. Others will notice, not immediately, not loudly. They'll notice in small moments. The way you don't over-explain. The way you leave when something feels wrong. The way you stay present without taking responsibility for everyone's comfort. That kind of presence speaks. You won't need to announce boundaries. You'll embody them, and people will feel it. Some will be confused by your calm. Some will be inspired by your clarity. Some may quietly fall away. That's not loss. That's alignment continuing its work. Aries, you don't need to persuade anyone to follow you. Your life becomes the invitation. When you stop rushing, when you stop rescuing, when you stop lighting yourself on fire to keep others warm, that's when leadership shows up differently. It's steady. It's grounded. It doesn't need a stage. This kind of leadership feels especially right now. Especially at this stage of life, when noise loses its appeal and integrity becomes magnetic. You may notice people asking you questions they never asked before, not because you have answers, but because you listen without judgment, because you don't pretend to be above the struggle. You lead by being human, by being honest about your limits, by modeling what it looks like to live with self-respect. Have you noticed how powerful it feels to no longer need to be understood by everyone? That's freedom. And freedom is contagious. You're not stepping into a role that demands more of you. You're stepping into one that asks you to be more precise, more intentional, more aligned. The impact you create now won't come from force. It will come from consistency, from choosing what stays, from walking away without bitterness, from trusting that the right people will recognize you without explanation. This isn't the loud beginning Aries is famous for. It's the grounded continuation. And as you settle into this way of moving, there's a gentle question waiting beneath it all. What happens when you stop trying to lead and simply live as who you are now? Because that answer is already shaping the next layer of this journey. And that's where we gently arrive next. Stay here with me for a moment longer, Aries. No urgency now. No next step you have to rush toward. Just this quiet space we've arrived in together. Because if there's one thing this awakening is asking of you, it's not speed. It's presence. You don't need to announce what's changed inside you. You don't need proof. You don't need to convince anyone that you're different now. Real awakening doesn't look for witnesses. It settles in slowly. It reshapes how you breathe, how you choose, how you rest. And you've already been doing that. Without ceremony, without drama, without needing permission. There's nothing you need to fix tonight. Nothing you need to figure out before morning. No version of yourself you need to become immediately. You're allowed to move at the pace that feels honest, because this isn't about becoming better. It's about becoming truer to what your body tells you when something is off, truer to what your intuition whispers before your mind jumps in, truer to the quiet knowing that says, I don't need to live the way I used to just because I always have. That kind of truth doesn't shout. It steadies, and it's okay if part of you still feels unsure. Awakening doesn't erase doubt. It teaches you how to walk with it without letting it steer. You don't have to make bold declarations. You don't have to change everything at once. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take one aligned step and then let yourself pause. Have you noticed how different your energy feels when you stop pushing yourself forward and allow life to meet you where you are? That's not stagnation. That's trust beginning to form. Trust in yourself. Trust in timing. Trust that clarity doesn't disappear when you slow down. If this message reached you, if something in it felt familiar, or calming, or quietly reassuring, that's not coincidence. It's recognition. Recognition that you're ready to live differently. Not louder, not faster, but with intention. And from here, nothing needs to be forced. You'll know when to move. You'll know when to rest. You'll know when to say yes, and when no is the kindest answer you can give yourself. So take this with you as you leave this moment. You don't need to chase the fire, Aries. You are the fire. Learning how to burn without burning yourself. And that understanding will keep unfolding long after this voice fades away. Before you leave, Aries, pause for just one more breath. Because if you stayed until this moment, it means something inside you recognized itself. Not loudly, not dramatically, but truthfully. You didn't listen to this by accident. And no, you don't need to explain why it resonated. Some awakenings aren't meant to be analyzed. They're meant to be felt and trusted. If this message stirred something in you, leave a quiet mark below. A word, a symbol, or simply, I trust myself. Not for me, but for you. So you remember this moment when the world gets loud again. And if you're walking this path with us, subscribe. Not because you need another voice, but because this is a space where Aries energy is honored, grounded, and understood. This isn't the end of the message. It's the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. The journey continues. Another message is already forming, and when it's time, you'll feel it. Until then, Aries, stay steady, stay honest, and above all, trust yourself.